It is my deep pleasure to now introduce our speaker for today. Now, mankind has been pondering the mysteries of the universe for as long as there's been eternity. And I think of Brian David Barry as one of the mysteries of the universe. And that means you're not in a box. You probably never even saw a box. And so no matter how we define you or ourselves, that's not who we are. Always new revelations, evolutions, etc. Now, I met him, Brian David Barry, in the 70s, late 70s, and he used to live here. He's always blessed the Fellowship of Inner Light and the people in it. He lived away for many years. He's raised family, and he's worked with special needs children for many, many years. And some of us know him personally. Some have perhaps only heard him speak, or you've gone to him for a reading. But he always blesses you. I like to think of Brian David Barry walking in a garden, and there's weeds, and he sees the weeds, but he sees them as sacred plants that perhaps don't know their identity yet, or more so, we don't know their identity, their true identity, and what they're here for, and how they're balancing and healing the universe. I think of you, Brian, as somebody who helps to enliven our souls and helps us to identify with the true pattern of love. So with no further ado, let's give Brian a warm welcome.
Well, so about 10 days ago, when I asked in prayer what I should be thinking of to share with you, towards the mic more.
You can hold it too if you'd rather.
I'm not good at that. Okay, can you hear me better? All right. I was told you should speak on the Sermon on the Mount. It took me about 3 days to get over the shock. I haven't been a very orderly Christian. I've been a Christian. I spent 7 years as an Episcopal acolyte. And I thought about what I heard. And like a lot of people, especially as I came into my teenage years, I couldn't help but be struck by the tremendous gap between what I heard from the pulpit and what we all were living down there in South Texas. That's no less true today. So the Sermon on the Mount. First, I was seeing it as a kind of advanced ILC. I am seeing some faces here who came to Paul's advanced ILCs. Typically around 70 people, some of them here in Virginia Beach, some in Norfolk, some in some other places. Heavens, what a feast they were. It was a love feast first. Also the music was great. There was a very heavy diet of esoterics as well. And I did pay attention to that. I guess I went to my first advanced ILC just after I had become an ILC guide, which also was very frightening to me. This was in the spring of '78. I started out as a guide, but there was a little training that took place first in that autumn. And as I sat with the other guides, there were about 7 in those days, people who were pretty much always on the road doing ILCs. What struck me most was when they were relaxed, and when Paul wasn't there, typically, they would tell us stories of what happened they were experiences, not classes. What happened in those experiences? It was one miracle after another. Healings came in bunches. Now, I could study the tapes. I could read the material. I didn't have the faintest idea in the world how to do a miracle or cause one to happen. I was a good Episcopalian. None of my prayers had ever produced a miracle. It would not have been in good taste. So I did ask Paul. I asked him, you and the guides are doing miracles. I don't know anything about that. Oh, he said, you should study the Huna material. And he handed me the secret science behind miracles. Max Long. Raise your hands if you know that. I'll bet a lot you know it. Yes, I read it. I didn't like it. Max Long was a real engineer. He was interested in step 1 and step 2 and step 3. And there was a lot of theory about what we are comprised of. Higher self, middle self, lower self. I wasn't hearing that in ILC either. No, what I was hearing was that the higher self is what we really were. What did all the rest of this have to do with it? I was not particularly attracted to what the kahunas did with it, according to Max Long, either. Nevertheless, I read The Secret Science Behind Miracles, and I read, The Secret Code in Religions? World Religions? I forget the exact title. Basically, it's a linguistic analysis based on the native Hawaiian language. I learned more from that than I learned from the first book. Max Long said every word is a musical tone. Like, I was blocked this word. Like a bit of Sanskrit. It evokes something from the universe it comes. It despises what you've been. Not just what you've been thinking about. It displaces what you have been. Like a mantra. That's the word that got away. I began to work with that. When I actually got out on the road and in front of an ILC experience that I was leading, why, the miracles happened for me too. I'll guarantee you I did not do them. The people who came, the seekers, they did their miracles. What was I giving them? Something to think about, a lot to think about, and permission. Permission to make the prayers they really wanted to make. And then what came to them, I gradually realized, came in accord with universal law. And Paul used to stretch, I'll have to use my word, precision in making prayers. He used to have quite a lengthy talk about a prayer being like a Sears order blank. You fill things out, and you put in the color and the size and the quantity, etc., etc. He really did want us to think about what we prayed for, and that's the most important part of that lesson. Did we really want it? And how did we want it? And what did we expect to happen to our lives when we got what we prayed for? Those were things that he wanted us to know about in prayer. So now let's come back to that first advanced ILC, the Sermon on the Mount. Christian tradition has it that it happened very shortly after Jesus came back from 40 days in the wilderness. Christian tradition and theology, I know this much, in approaching the Sermon on the Mount, really is a little befuddled about what to do with it. It's a hard piece, and many Christians think about it very, very differently. And it is full of instructions almost impossible for humans to use. Martin Luther, the first Lutheran, I suppose, did say of it that it was meant to drive us into the arms of a forgiving Jesus, because it was all impossible. I did spend some time rereading the Sermon on the Mount before I came up here. Well, it is. It's all pretty much impossible for humans. So I guess it is like the Constitution of the United States. It's what we aim for and rarely attain. Gradually, very gradually. And only after I began to do readings 10 years ago did I understand universal law is not what we will be judged by when this life is over. Universal law is more like what Edgar Cayce called ideals. You hold them in front of you. You remind yourself, you reach for them, and occasionally attain them. And the reason I mentioned my own readings was, as soon as I began to do readings, most of my beliefs were shattered and torn and left behind. I cannot possibly encompass the varieties of experience that meet me when a person sits with me and we have a reading. So what have I learned about universal law? I've let go of a lot of things. I don't know that I've learned anything that I didn't know sitting as an acolyte listening to the minister back in Texas. Several things leaped out at me as I reread the Sermon on the Mount. It's in Matthew 5 through 12. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, so that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. Therefore, be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Perfect. That's a big Huna word to Max Long. And it doesn't seem to him to be impossible. Because he means when you enter into prayer, what I would have to call an operation, you make yourself perfect through a series of stages. Okay, I know some stages. I know the 7 terraces pretty well. We do go through stages, and each stage is a consciousness. And we experience that consciousness. The consciousness is more important than the colors. The consciousness I practice, I take out on the street and use in real life. More or less, with success. Real life is harder than prayer life. People push back. I wouldn't know any of those consciousnesses if I had not practiced them, honestly, daily since 1977. And I still do. They've changed. Of course. They were meant to change. They were meant to cause you to conform to their truth, which unfolds over time and only in application. It does us no good at all to learn universal law as a textbook lesson. It only becomes a burden. Can we attain it? Yes, if we love people enough to give it a try. That's what it takes. It isn't about the grasp of our minds. I know there's some very bright people here. But I also know that our minds are inadequate. It's something that we do. And because there's someone in front of us that we care about, we do it with everything we have. And then it unfolds. And then you might say, we've begun to grasp it. Let me go back for a moment to all the miracles in the early ILC days. It really was like the book of Acts. I'm not exaggerating. I did keep a journal faithfully, and I must tell you there weren't enough hours in the day to record them all. There were a lot of miracles. About 10 years ago, an ILC guide, just when I had begun to do readings, asked me to do a reading, and this was her question. May I invoke the presence of the band of spirits that were with ILCs in the 70s? The reply began, these entities who are spirits, universal forces, and angelic ones, are ever eager to come where hearts are aflame with love for an immanent God. Those who have long supped with the Christ burn with a steady and an even flame. And indeed, love radiates from them as from a steady source. And we went on from there. A steady source, not an operation done by a kahuna or a sorcerer, even a prophet. Something that we make our own as we apply it again and again and again. We come here. First we come for joy and worship with each other. That first. We come to renew our love for each other and to support each other. Equally important. And we come to be renewed. It isn't easy to renew yourself in solitude, day after day, year after year. We need each other. And we need to come, we need to embrace these things that we share. Jesus began the Sermon on the Mount with 8 statements that were a lot like bihas. You remember bihas? Nowadays we tend to call them affirmations. Christian writers seem to disagree about whether the text of the Sermon on the Mount is complete, or whether it was all delivered in that moment, or it's quite a lengthy address, the entire thing. But I find it impossible to believe that those disciples who recorded this didn't record these 8 brief statements with perfect accuracy. I think that they did. So what do we do with them? I'm going to leave Reverend Luther behind. I had trouble enough getting past guilt. I don't want to go back there again. If you read these as laws you must obey in order to survive in heaven, well, the game is over before you start. Let's not think of them that way. Let's hear them as affirmations. And I'm going to suggest to you, not that I have a whole new meaning for them, I really don't. I'm going to suggest to you instead, as I read them in a moment, that you listen. That you listen to your bodies, and I do mean the middle and the lower selves, and see if you feel a tickle in one of them as I read through these affirmations. And then we'll have a little meditation. And I want you to meditate on the one that spoke to you. That's the way I use these remarks and others like them. Of course, they are impossibly cryptic. They're very short. People write very lengthy, abstruse books about them, but they're very short. I can read them here in about 2 minutes. So don't picture me. Close your eyes instead and picture Jesus on the mountainside with a lot of people in front of him. And I know from my own study, most of those people were probably not Hebrews. They were a mix. They were not so familiar with law, might not even have been welcome in the temple. He gave them affirmations. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I hear those who know they are empty and long to be filled. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I hear broken-hearted. We've all been there. We may all be there 1 more or 2 more times before we're done. come heal a broken heart? Yes, although time is often required. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Meek's a funny word. Most of you knew Paul. He wasn't so meek. He didn't want us to be meek. I'm sure of that. He did want us to turn away from force. It'd be too crude to say to turn away from violence. He wanted us to proceed from a heart of love and inner peace in all the things that we did, the actions and the prayers that we made. That's what I hear when I hear meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. That was the draw in ILC. The people who came were hoping to wake up. They were uncomfortable in their lives, all of them. They knew they needed healing, all of them. They hungered, not for righteousness so much, but for the light, although I think few could have put that into words. But that's who came, and that's who ILC was for. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I don't know what I can add to that. I'm just a worn-out intellectual. Pure in heart comes to me rarely. I do recognize it when it arrives. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. I hear the sons of God who sang with the morning stars in all creation. The ones who will never forget why we're here and what we're doing here. We remember it. And every time we enter prayer and meditation, we ask, I'm going to be there again. Help me get there. And then we let go. And we may find ourselves there when we do. Blessed are the persecuted, for the sake of justice, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I hear something very personal here. I know, like many of you, I have not enjoyed being mocked as a psychic. Paul taught me not to be ashamed of that. It was a big step. I think if I hadn't learned it, I think my life would have been much shorter than it has been, and undistinguished. Now we'll meditate for only 5 minutes. Think of the one that spoke to you, the one, honestly, that made you a little uncomfortable. Let's dissolve away that discomfort. Let's ask the light to replace it with something true. This is not the moment to dwell on regrets or what I should have done or how I failed others. No. This is the moment to ask the light to replace that which tickled and felt uncomfortable as we listened to those affirmations. Let's do that now, just for 5 minutes, in the silence. So here we are in a temple on our own mountain. Not beginners. The salt of the earth. That's what I see when I look around this room. Here we are in a city on a hill. Cannot be hid. We may not be on television. We may not be jetting around too many countries. Not yet. We're all teachers. Each of us has had to find the words and the moments to share not what we've mastered, but what we love. And in the sharing, the mastery comes. So come back to me.